Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening in the world of YouTube. And today we actually have some guests with us today. As we're allowing people to join us, because GS is live right now talking about scam is scars. And when we're done over here, he has an open panel if we'd like to join. We've already been invited. So I'm definitely going to jump on that scars fraud train over there and go run my go run my mouth on that.
Jesus.
Go run my suck over there on that channel a little bit too. I'm sure GS would appreciate it. Definitely comedy hour over there. Um, but for those who are just now tuning in, we've got a rare special guest appearance by Texas Gal Audits. Go ahead and say hello and tell
Howdy,
everybody about you for those
everyone.
who don't
Howdy,
know about you.
y'all. I met BZ about almost a year ago. Unfortunately, because I got trespassed from a post office, he reached out to me. We became good friends ever since then. We've done some cop watches together, done at a post office. We commerce a lot. We talk about a lot of things. And Brick got introduced to both Brick and OTVO through BZ and never met them
Playing
personally,
from
but
desktop.
channels, and we talk often through chats. And these three gentlemen support me, and they've supported me through the beginning of my auditing and even through my having to halt auditing right now. They still support me, and that's what I'm doing here.
And we don't see the professional agitator, Let's OTVO, up here very often. So, for those, I'm sure most of you know Let's OTVO, but if in case you don't, go ahead and give a little intro there. They're OTVO, or OTVO as most people like to pronounce it.
The OPVO.
Let's OTVO. I'm just one of these people within the last year. I've actually experienced the sometimes a demonic action of an overzealous police force in many locations, many circumstances. It's not like just a little bit here, just a little bit there. I'm working in my own city. I've been kicked out just about of every office building that you can determine here. Uh, we could just start with the police department, maybe. How about the civil rights office trying to fight the police department kicking me out? Let's see. Maybe there's a couple more, but I'm old and I forget them. So I'll concede the floor to Mr. Brick Jonesy here. Will pick up my slack. I thank you very much. I'll just sit here and listen for a while if that's okay. Thanks.
And Brick, I'm pretty sure the entire world of YouTube knows you by now. I mean, Mr. Trespass from every state, city, county, jurisdiction. But for those who don't know you, why don't you go ahead and tell a little bit about yourself, Brick?
Yeah, I'm pretty good at getting trespassed, apparently. It is pretty wild because I didn't expect to be this deeply involved with our community. I do have a very strong personality, and I do know that. So it's not surprising that many people are getting to know who I am. But I will say that there has been a lot of support for me, and I'm very much appreciative of that. Mr. Let's OTVO, massive amount of support. Chili Dog, BZ, Tex Gal, a lot of the members of the 1A community. Me and Let's have been out to the Auditor Palooza this year and got to meet some other auditors and cop watchers. It's really nice to see that a community, even through all the turmoil and the disagreement, we still tend to stick together. And that's the beauty of America. We might have differing ideas, but ultimately the reigning idea is freedom and in that liberty. So I'm appreciative.
And I'm going to say, for those of you who are tuning in, I haven't seen here before, howdy, 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 and welcome. You guys are always welcome as long as you don't troll or spam. I like to keep the chat open for people that actually truly have questions or like to comment about what we're doing or who we are and what we plan on doing in the future. Right now, I'm currently facing a disorderly conduct charge. I don't think any of you guys have gotten one of those yet. I'll be the first. I definitely wasn't the first one to get the trespass, and neither were you, Brick. But we're going to point to her box over here. Yeah.
No. No.
But I think she's going to be one of the first ones to beat her charge out of all of us. I'm still pending court date. Brick just recently got a BS charge as well. It seems like all of our charges are BS, and that's why we are all here, fighting the good fight against tyranny and corruption, which is kind of what brings us to the channel tonight with the introduction of 2 more Fort Worth cops bite the dust. And I'm seriously focused on Fort Worth PD right now, almost like a one-man assault team here. I didn't have anything to do with this termination, but I do tell you how to get these cops fired every chance you get. And we're going to talk about how these cops got fired, because this is kind of how I get cops fired. Excuse me. So we're going to get into that. But real quick, for anybody who didn't see the premiere about an hour and a half ago, I dropped about an 8-minute bank audit. Every Thursday, 6 p.m. Central, tune in. I'll have a new audit for you available. I will premiere it. And before we get started, I kind of just want to say hello to everybody. We got Peace Dynamo, who's always here and has been supporting. Chuck P, who's also another supporter. Team DLZ, baby, right there. Kersey One, you're always in here. King Bluto, Rob, you're always in here. Appreciate you guys for coming and supporting everybody here in the channel. Troy Scott, I believe this is the first time I've seen you, so greetings. Oh, a Fort Worth resident. You're going to love tonight's thing if you don't like the Fort Worthless PD, because they just got rid of 2 more of their own. And I'm after a few more myself. If you look at the banner on the main channel, you'll see we've already gotten rid of 1, thanks to Miss Carolina, who's in our hearts because she's currently in a jail cell because of a probation violation. But she will be having a hearing tomorrow in court at 1:30. So our hearts and our prayers go out to her and hope things go as well. Joko, thanks for coming in. Wolfman, as always. Sulich. So I'm going to get into this real quick. And I'm going to read this straight from my phone, because the article I have here is more than what I've been able to find on Google, because this was just released 2 hours ago, 3 hours ago. So nobody's covering this yet. And once I cover this and read this, I'm going to basically teach you guys how to get cops fired, and then we'll have an open discussion on what you guys think, and things that we've talked about and worked on together or separately and kind of shared. But this article goes to, excuse me, the Fort Worth Police Department fired 2 officers on Thursday. I like to call it Thor's Day, because one cop I had to run in, his name was Thor, so I call it Thor's Day, especially when there's really good news about a cop getting fired. So on Thursday, after internal affairs investigations, but refused to say why the officers were under investigation, Sergeant Catherine Fries and Officer Ruben Gastillium were terminated following separate, unrelated administrative investigations, the department said in a news release on January 23rd. Fries and Gastillium were fired after the internal investigations determined they violated multiple departmental policies. Remember that word, folks, because I will be back on it. According to the statement, Fries has been with the department for 23 years, and Gastillium has worked there for 3 years. Both were assigned to the Fleet Division at the time of their termination, the release states. A police spokesperson would not answer questions. I got some feedback going on the mic, guys. Mute your mics, please. A police spokesperson would not answer questions Thursday about what policies the 2 officers were accused of violating. I'm going to mute everybody's mic here because it's okay, good. What policies the 2 officers were accused of violating. The Fort Worth Police Department exists to safeguard the lives and property of those we serve, and is committed to the highest standards of professionalism in doing so. Sorry. The release states, in these cases, neither officer conducted themselves in manner that represents the professionalism of our officers. Assistant Chief Robert Ulrich concurred with the chain of command's determinations for both investigations and terminated Sergeant Freaks and Officer Gastillium's employment with the department, the release says. And that is the end of the article. Manuel Mata, appreciate you coming in. Two more bite the dust a couple hours ago. So Manuel Mata is here in Fort Worth. He's also a First Amendment activist, cop watcher. Thanks, Chevy, for the $10 super chat. And he's fighting the good fight in the trenches like the rest of us. And we're taking on the Fort Worthless PD and just trying to eliminate bad cops. There's a lot of them out there, and we seem to run in quite a few of them out here. So before we get into any of your guys' thoughts, I just want to let you guys know the real way to get rid of cops is look for the policy violations, guys. Always look for policy violations. Go through the general orders, go through their special orders, go through any kind of maybe secret orders that they have. Once you find a policy violation, always file the complaint, get it on camera, video your encounter down in internal affairs. Make sure you fill out and document the exact policy violation that they violated. Because if you don't, they won't investigate it. They'll find a loophole. They'll wipe their butt with the complaint form, and it won't go anywhere. I've got one sitting here where 3 officers are. It is chief of police for misconduct, untruthfulness, and excessive force that I caught on camera. Carolina had actually showed up right after the incident, but they were currently in the process of retaliating against me for filming that. And again, Carolina, I brought her up because she's currently in a cell right now in county for a probation violation with her hearing tomorrow at 1:30. So again, please put all your hearts and prayers out to her and hope that this goes well for her tomorrow. And hopefully she's released from the dungeon as quickly as possible back to her family and friends and back out here on the streets doing what she does best, which is screaming at bad cops. But I'm going to open it up for any of you guys. If you guys want to have any questions about termination of officers, policy violations, what to look for, how to do it, and the whole process, I'll leave it up to you guys to speak up and ask questions.
Yeah. So I was trying to listen, and so with them getting rid of those officers, they didn't let it be known what those violations were for entirely.
That's correct. They haven't disclosed what actual policy violations there were.
Right.
They were working in fleet operations, 2 separate investigations. So I'm guessing it had something to do with their fleet policy operations, some sort of violations.
Okay.
What
is fleet?
Fleet would be something to do with like their vehicles, their maintenance, the operations of upkeeping of those vehicles.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
possibly
Gotcha.
possibly even into the area of dispatching vehicles to where they need to go. So operations is a big umbrella, but
right. So and those officers, did it state their names at all?
Yeah, I read that out. I know that Mata's asking it right now. I'm just trying to pull that back up.
Yeah. And then their ranks, did it have titles as well?
Yes, it was Sergeant Catherine Freaks and Officer. I'm trying to look up the first name again. Officer something Gastillium. Hold on, let me look at that real quick.
She's a freak.
House, because he's not in the house anymore.
Got some freaks.
So we have
but it didn't actually name their actual, like, see, they've got, so that there's the rank, but then I'm assuming they would have a title if they're in fleet, like
Oh,
their actual job title.
it just because they are just police officers, and let me do this. Let me just
Okay.
share this on the screen real quick. Um, I'll just put this back up on the screen real quick. So if anybody has any questions, Tech Scout, you don't have to go anywhere. Tech Scout, you don't want to go anywhere. You don't have to go anywhere. Put this back up on the screen real quick, right there. So it's a sergeant and a police officer. So right there, those are the names. I'm sorry, I have a
Okay.
lot of ads popping up on this Fort Worth Telegram article. It doesn't say what they were.
Catherine and Ruben. So that's the sergeant would be a female and the officer is a male.
Yes, that's correct.
Hmm.
So now it says they refuse to say why the officers run an investigation, but anytime they don't follow those policy violations, you got to understand they are shielded by qualified immunity because
Mhm.
of policy. Diana Graham, Kittle 23, welcome to the channel. Jim, do fit. Diane, I just want to make sure I caught everybody. So their policies, if their policies say they can break the law, like say an illegal U-turn,
Okay.
or they're
Yeah.
shielded by that policy.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Now,
They're allowed because they're supposedly running to an emergency or whatever. Even if it's not, it could still be a policy violation as long as they're
let me give you an
shielded by
example.
qualified
Let me give
immunity.
you an example. I got a buddy called Chuck Bronson,
Yeah.
which a lot of people know here, and we
Yeah.
love policy violations. And um, the one that he loves to get these cops on and call them out and get in trouble. Now they're not going to get fired over it, but they're going to get the supervisor's going to get pissed off. They may get a verbal or a written reprimand for it, but it's called a
Yeah.
tobacco policy. So if they're caught chewing or smoking in uniform in the eye of the
Yeah.
public, that is a tobacco policy violation.
Yep.
And my
Okay.
buddy Chuck catches them all the time on that simple policy violation.
So, and of course, it doesn't say the actual titles, like what their job duties were.
No.
It just mentions their name. I mean, you could do essentially, you could do some records requests and get some information. You might not actually get the actual information release that you want.
Well, here's the problem with that, Brick. They fall under a civil service union, so
Yeah.
it's very hard to get records from these guys. Now, I do want to
Right.
point out something else, though. So here is Chief Noakes. Okay, this man is set to retire in May. He's announced it. There's a lot of stuff going on. What I noticed today is when I went on here, I've noticed a few things, actually. I've noticed some people have been moved out of certain positions. Like right
Oh,
here,
changing. Yep.
this
Gotcha.
this deputy chief right here
Mm-hmm.
no longer has a picture. So I believe this is a new deputy chief being put into this position here because
Right.
they had a picture of somebody here before. And what I
Gotcha.
noticed too is down here on the West Command, there was a different female here as the West Commander, and she's no longer there. Now there's another
Gotcha.
female here, and there's no picture. So I don't know what internal changes. And this guy here, this Northwest Commander, Randy Molina, I don't remember. He seems like he might be new, but I could be wrong. I don't. I recognize the rest of these faces, but it looks like they're making command changes.
Yes.
So there's definitely something going on with the ranks of the Fort Worth Police Department, and I do know that over the last few years, when Chief Noakes took over, they fired a chief, and I think they fired another deputy or assistant chief in there who's now suing the city for like eight. I think she got like an $8 million settlement. I don't know the full details. I'm still trying to find out, but there's definitely a big time lawsuit in there. But for those people who are just tuning in, I wasn't going to do a very long stream tonight. I'm really just kind of here you go. Here you go. That says it right there. Manuel says Fleet Service Division helps other departments accomplish their mission by providing fleet maintenance, fueling, acquisition, and auction services. This division reduces frequency of repair, though. So I was pretty close to describing Fleet Division, but I forgot about the acquisition and the auction services. I wasn't sure who really handled that part of it, but
Gotcha.
I definitely knew it wasn't patrol.
Yeah, and this actually makes a lot of sense to me as well. So I mean, it could, like, this is maintenance, more or less, right?
Yeah.
They're doing fueling, making sure certain things are coming in for the vehicles themselves, whether something's going out, if it's going to be sold off, whatever, like the auction services. So these types of policy violations, I mean, just kind of spitballing a little bit here, which is, that.
Here. Let's see if I can find it right here. And I didn't mean to cut you off. I apologize.
No, you're good. You're good. I don't know. You're the guy, bro. You're the policy guy. Hey, I'm guessing when it comes to this.
I'm just looking here at this. So just to give people an idea, here's the organizational chart.
Okay.
So I'm going to try to blow this up a little bit. So right here, you've got, I'm trying to see if I can move this over somewhere, but okay, I got to do it this way. So there's three assistant chiefs. Okay. So you got one that's finance personnel that handles like basically the money and the personnel.
Mm-hmm.
Support, which would fall under probably where we're going to find the fleet services, and then you have patrol. Okay. And then of course it comes down to the chain. So let's scroll down and see if we can find fleet services real quick. Tactical, criminal, special intelligence. There's no intelligence inside policing. Direct response, gang unit, traffic, community. I'm just looking here to see if I can find it anywhere. Jail operations. Might be on this side. Budget and procurement. Fiscal. It might be on this side, actually. Policy management. Those are the people that pretty much put policies together for the chief.
Right.
And then it might be under some sort of, I mean, if you get moved to fleet, I'm thinking you probably already in trouble.
Well,
because that's not somewhere I want to be.
Yeah, I was wondering if that's not the case too, because most cops want to get out, like cops. They're all gung ho when they go in, then they're gung ho when they come out of training. They want to get out there. So if these folks were in fleet at all, like that's not the ground, and that I'm just
and I'm not seeing it here, so it may fall under some miscellaneous.
Right. But beyond that, hey, look, the types of policies, I'm just like, again, guessing it's fleet, right? It's maintenance, those types of policy violations. And I know money might be involved, possibly,
might be,
but then if that's the case, I don't know if it would be policy. I feel like that would be,
it could be something as simple as maybe taking a car home that you weren't supposed to take home.
Yeah, something like that.
Not maybe checking the mileage correctly on something.
Not keeping stations clean and organized. Things like, chief walks in and all of a sudden you're looking at a mess every single time you walk in. Things like that make sense. But then, this is just me spitballing. My mind goes here. I can't help it, but it's a female sergeant and a male officer. Just saying. It's a possibility that something was happening there.
Well, I mean, it could be still. I mean, they could have simply pumped gas and they're using their gas fleet cards in their personal vehicles.
What I'm saying is, maybe they got caught making out.
No, they said it was on two separate investigations. So there might have been something That's why I'm thinking using maybe using a gas card for their personal vehicles.
Well, I mean, even if it's two separate investigations, like, so it's an investigation for him and for her, and then
Well, you got to just to let everybody know, Brick is over here speculating.
I am 100% absolutely speculating, because when it comes to these guys, these officers, these jackboots, these pigs, they will do the wildest stuff, man. And I mean, it could be so many different things, really.
Manuel Mata, I am putting a StreamYard link in the description if you want to come up and talk a little bit about it. This might be a little fun.
I mean, it could be anything.
Well, Manuel Mata's been doing this for some years up here in Fort Worth, so he does have some more insight than I do. He's got his connections and his things that he knows, and I find out my things on my end and look at certain things, and sometimes we do collab, and it's I don't want to say we're like a team, but we do kind of our paths kind of go the same direction or cross at one point.
And this is the area where I definitely am not versed. Like, I know our rights really well, and I know quite a bit of law, but the policies, I don't know as much policy stuff and what would cause.
When you say like with Chili, he always talks about policies, procedures, and protocols.
Right.
These are things that the cops have to follow. If they don't follow them, it puts the department at liable for risk of being sued, or that money they try to protect to use for things goes out the window.
Yeah.
So that's how people get fired. That's how people get sued. They don't care about the law. They don't care about rights, even though they should be, because they took that oath. And we do have signed sworn oaths here, by the way, in Texas. I'm just letting you know. Because in New Mexico, obviously they don't have any in New Mexico, as we're finding out.
Supposedly, allegedly, it's not supposed to be that way. It's not the legal way to do it.
and there is my legal eagle right there, Mr. Mark Stryth. By the way, if you guys don't have a lawyer already and you're in the DFW area, Mark Stryth also handles criminal cases in surrounding counties as well here in the Metroplex at Pathian Legal Group. That telephone number to the office is 817-381-2216. His office is located right here in Fort Worth at 1020 McCone Street, Suite 5, Fort Worth, Texas. So if you need a lawyer for criminal defense needs and other services as well, you can get a hold of Mark Stryth at Pathian Legal Services. I'm sorry, Pathian Legal Group. I didn't mean to butcher that up for you, Mark. He's the one that's represented me. He represented Carolina at Fort Worth with her trial and working on her case. I'm not going to go into details because I'm not going to talk about that. But the two officers that were fired, to answer your question, Mark, were Sergeant Catherine Freaks, Freix, and Officer Ruben, what I say?
Yeah.
Oh shit! I gotta look it up again.
You put it in the chat too, so let me look.
Here, I did. I know. I just keep putting them down though. Ruben Castillo.
Yep.
I'll put it up here on this.
Diana Graham asked a question in the chat.
Go ahead and ask that question out loud so I can.
It says, question: why is it so easy to move to another department after getting fired?
That one's an easy one. I can answer that one fairly easy. What happens is they're not technically fired. They're put on an indefinite suspension so they can keep their peace officer certification active, which allows them time to go to another department and go through the hiring process as a lateral officer. They hire them on, and then what they do is they apply for a transfer of a peace officer license, and become somebody else's problem at that point. But when they're on indefinite suspension, they take away all their arrest powers and everything like that, and no longer technically work for the department. A lot of times you'll see unions that will literally, when they say they're fired, they're indefinitely suspended, and the police union is basically appealing it under the civil service union that they have here in the city of Fort Worth. The police unions have a lot of power here, and that's kind of another thing we are battling. Because if you're going to be fired, you should be fired. You know, if it's serious enough, you commit a crime or a serious rights violation, you should be thrown in jail.
Mm-hmm.
But if you did something that maybe didn't maintain some sort of paperwork or something, that policy violation that got you fired, if you want to move to another job or appeal it or something, then I think you should be able to. But if you committed a crime, no, you should be thrown in jail like everybody else.
Yep.
I mean, hell, Brick's been arrested. I've been arrested. Other people have been arrested for things that didn't even warrant an arrest, that weren't technically a crime. So when these officers break the law, why aren't they held to a higher standard? Why aren't they at least booked to the jail and have their mugshot taken like we do? So, but Mark Strife says many officers will resign in lieu of termination. That happens a lot too, or they'll retire so they keep their pensions, which means bad paper isn't filed on them. That's true. And then they go to another department. Yeah, it's just like with, in fact, Matthew Kruger. Matt, by the way, I'm going to put his first middles, because he has two middle names and last name. Matthew David Bowie Kruger. You haven't done the name David Bowie any justice, but you did get the knife because you were axed twice.
That's terrible.
From the city of from the city of Irving for 2 counts of excessive force. You were terminated. You filed a lawsuit. You got your job back. You came to Fort Worth PD because you didn't want to adhere to the rehire conditions that they gave you. You came here, and God only knows how many excessive force complaints were against you before the 2 here in 2024. David Bowie, the singer. I'm sorry, I was thinking of Jim Bowie when I said that. We don't like David Bowie, the singer.
Oh, I didn't even catch that. Yeah, I didn't catch the reference. It didn't even register. I was
thinking Bowie knife,
Gotcha.
And then
Bowie.
And then in 2024, he did it again. 2 more excessive force claims, got the axe, got fired, and now he's currently appealing it, trying to get his job back. So who knows? He may get his job back and then turn around and go somewhere else. Now, I told Carolina she really needs to file a criminal complaint, because that will stop and decertify him until his charges are dismissed or until he's found guilty. And then that will prevent him from going somewhere else, at least in the meantime. But when she gets out of jail, she needs to file a criminal complaint for that excessive force on him. And this is why I bring this up, because if you guys take your charges, plea out your deals, these cops will never be held accountable. If you don't file internal affairs complaints and put the policy violations in your complaints, they will continue to keep violating people and not because they don't care. It's like a child. You get a 2-year-old child that does something bad. If you don't slap their hand and put them in timeout and teach them that it's a bad thing to do and not to do it, and you just, I can't slap you. I'm not going to put you in the corner, little Jimmy. Just don't do it again. Well, little Jimmy's going to do it again because there's no consequences. There's no punishment. You scolded him and pointed at him. He knows he's not going to get hurt. He knows you still love him. And guess what? He's just going to keep on doing all those bad habits until one day he ends up becoming a criminal because he hasn't learned the difference between right and wrong. And that's the problem with these cops. They don't learn. And until they get thrown in jail or, until they get fired and they can no longer be a peace officer, it's like a lawyer. Lawyer gets disbarred. What do? They can't practice law anymore. So why are we allowing the cops to keep practicing and going somewhere else? So,
Yep, I agree.
check this out. Here we go. Fort Worth PD is trying to quash my subpoena for Chief Noakes to come testify about Kruger's termination tomorrow. Ooh.
Interesting. Well,
what about? I know you're dealing with a murder trial. You're dealing with this. What about my motion to quash? I want to know about my case. I'm sorry, I'm being selfish here. Never mind, I'm kidding. David Murphy, I tried to call you yesterday, so that 713 number that popped up on your caller ID, that was me, buddy. So make sure you reach out to me or text me or call me. But Mark Strife, since you are in the chat, actually, I'm going to do this. Mark, you can stay in the chat, or you come on up on panel and talk to us a little bit. But I think that I'll even let you come in and plug in the law firm and tell everybody more about the firm. I mean, I just stick with the criminal defense because that's what I'm working on. Yeah, I mean, I don't like good cops. You guys know my little. Every time I find a bad cop, I love doing my records request. I love finding my policy violations because that's how I get written up. I'm giddy as a schoolgirl on Fridays and Mondays when I get my records request back. So, but you guys can help donate. I need to raise $2,500 to get some funds in to get Mark paid, so he can. I mean, we've worked out retainment plans, but I like to get him paid, and that way he can just focus on what he's got to do, which is getting my neck off the line and out of the criminal court system, so I can continue with what I'm going to do to hold these pigs accountable. And I just can't announce what I'm going to do. Brick, you kind of know my strategy. I just don't want to announce it because I'm not trying to talk about my case whatsoever and what my plans are after I beat this case, because I don't want them to see it coming in case they happen to be watching. Unlike, I don't know if Mark's coming up or not. I don't know if he's figured out the StreamYard thing. I don't know. He might be busy working on something, but yeah, these are the officers that were terminated. OTVO, I'm sorry. Let's Otvo over there in the corner. You got anything to say?
No, I was just thinking in my head here. It's like not wanting to talk about things, kind of thing. Yeah, just mum's the word. Yeah,
mum's the word. That's right. Yeah.
Mum's the word.
Well, and that's what I'm and I know you guys have got a lot of kind of connect the dots thing going on in Albuquerque.
Too many to count.
Yeah.
But follow him. Oh, wait, here we go. Here, let me put Mark up here at the top. Let me kind of replace my face real quick. All right, Mark, you want to introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are, what you do?
Yeah, sure. I don't have a lot of time, but can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you great.
Okay. Yeah, my name's Mark Strife. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I also do criminal appeals. As BZ said, I'm based out of Fort Worth. I also have an office in Plano, but I do travel across the entire state. If the case is, worth my time and money, I'll go anywhere. I do practice federal criminal defense as well, mainly in the Northern District of Texas. But I do believe in exercising your constitutional rights and that the government shouldn't infringe on those. So I like to try to help out where I can, at least on the criminal side of things when they start trying to arrest people for exercising those rights.
Well, Mark, one more question. I know you didn't bring it up because you're a very humble guy, but I've seen you in the courtroom. Would you like to let everybody know a little bit about your military service and what you did?
Yeah, sure. So I spent 10 years in the Marine Corps in various jobs. 3 years of that I spent with the State Department, protecting ambassadors, secretaries of state, and presidents overseas. Then I became an interrogator and was attached to a task force that hunted down high-value targets in the Middle East, and started their interrogations before we'd turn them over to the CIA, things of that nature.
And that's probably what makes you a great litigator. And the way you just fire
really
away
happy
those
you made it
questions.
home. Yeah, I'm really happy you made it home.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, pleasure to meet you.
And Letso TVO, he's also a Navy veteran as well, Mark.
Oh, okay.
And Brick's dad, I believe your dad was in the Marine Corps as well, correct?
No, well, so he did 4 years active duty Air Force, 18 years active in the Navy, 30 years civil service, and he still contracts. He still works for them bastards. So he's put a lot of time into this country, and so I'm super appreciative. And I've straightened my life out. I'm not the saint for sure, but I've straightened my life out, and now I'm trying to do something for the good fight.
No, Mark. You spoke with Carolina yesterday. Did you speak with her today at all?
No, I didn't get an opportunity to speak with her today. I just spoke with her yesterday, and I told her I probably wouldn't be able to speak to her until tomorrow before we get going on her motion for new trial hearing.
And can you kind of explain to us a little bit how that because I don't know what kind of hearing it is exactly, but can you kind of let people know what since she was convicted and what you've been working on and kind of what the next step is for her?
Yeah, sure. So we filed a motion for new trial on a few different grounds. One of the grounds is that there was insufficient evidence to find her guilty of the offense of interference with public duty. And in the motion we cite case law and make some arguments about the evidence that was presented during the trial and how if you apply that evidence or lack thereof to the case law, she should have been found not guilty. If the judge grants the motion for new trial on those grounds, essentially it's rendering an acquittal. There won't actually be a new trial because the state had their chance and the judge agrees that it was insufficient evidence. So at that point, the state can appeal up to a court of appeals and say that the trial judge got it wrong and the jury got it right. But, we'll see what happens there. We also filed on grounds of newly discovered evidence in that, less than a week after Carolina's trial, Chief Noakes comes out and makes a public statement that Kruger got fired. He was firing Kruger, which would have been great information to know prior to trial. According to the prosecutor, he didn't know. He actually contacted me the next morning after all the newspaper articles and everything came out. And I asked him if he was aware, and he said no. I got to take that at face value. The police department doesn't necessarily inform the DA's office of what their plans are. And so we have subpoenaed Chief Noakes to come testify at the motion for new trial hearing tomorrow. He was served with that subpoena on the 21st. City attorney's office contacted me, asked me, "Hey, these documents you want him to bring, is it just the documents you want?" And I was like, "No, I want them on the stand." And at close of business today, they filed a motion to quash the subpoena, stating that we didn't have grounds for him to testify, and he's not the right person to testify, and a bunch of stuff. So looks like we might be arguing against the city of Fort Worth tomorrow as well.
Oh, wow. So that's now somebody put in a comment something about I was trying to find it real quick. Not there. I know that's where they're talking about the court. There was something about they're not going to release her until the bond is paid.
Yeah. I'm not going to say much on that. BZ, you know a little about that, and I've talked to Carolina about it. She was out on an appeal bond, which we did not request. She was sentenced to 30 days in jail and a $750 fine. I'm sorry, I'm walking around I'm on my phone doing this, and the volume's not great. But we wanted her because at the time where they had her in the jail, she was getting 3-for-1 credit. And I'm going to apologize if you hear a bunch of noise in a second. My wife is just getting home with my daughter. But she really, by the time we had another hearing after her trial, she was only going to have to serve like 2 more days in jail. And technically her sentence would have been fulfilled. We could still appeal. We could still get the conviction itself overturned, possibly on appeal, but she wouldn't have had any other like repercussions. She essentially would have been free to move about and do what she wanted to do. And so we kind of purposely went that route, and not asking for an appeal bond. Well, the court called us back in and decided they didn't want to keep her in jail anymore, and they're going to give her probation. And probation, when you're appealing, sorry, my daughter's making a bunch of noise. When you're appealing a case and you're put on probation, the probation wouldn't actually start. Hey, baby. All right, sorry. Here's my daughter. The probation wouldn't actually start. Say hi. Say hi to people. Go see grandma and mama. Probation wouldn't actually start until the appeal process is over. And so with that being said, they wanted to get her out of jail. So he granted her an appeal bond. We never asked for one. I even said, well, she can't afford it. And he gave her a PR bond anyway. So the probation, the bond conditions are very similar to what the probation conditions would be. And they're saying she violated it. And so she's in jail, but all that time she's sitting in there right now is credited to that cause number. So there's other issues involved in the motion for new trial with regards to what happened afterwards. And sorry, 1 second, baby, you need to be quiet.
She's just daddy's little girl, Mark. That's all.
So,
Hi.
all right.
She's definitely not camera shy, Mark.
No, she's not. She's not shy at all. But that's another reason we're going in there and arguing tomorrow, is because I don't believe the judge had the actual authority to. What he did was essentially wiped out all her back time credit that she had and placed it as days as condition of probation, which means once her probation, if it was to actually start, she has no back time credit. That was all credited towards the probation sanction, and she'd have another 30 days hanging over her head.
Right.
So we've got a lot of arguments to make tomorrow.
So you're saying all the time she served right now just wouldn't count at all?
So the time she served prior to trial and then right after trial, the way the judge's order was, he credited that back time towards her 10 days condition of probation. And the condition of when you serve 10 days as a condition of probation, those days don't count towards any jail sentence or prison sentence. It's essentially a sanction for going on probation. And once you don't have that back time credit anymore, the full sentence is available if she should violate probation in the future. I've got arguments as to why that shouldn't have been, obviously. And there was really no benefit to putting her on probation when she really only had 2 more days to do anyway.
Is there any reason why the judge did it? Did the DA influence or motion for anything that caused for him to make that decision?
I honestly do not know. I can't speak to the fact that the DA's office contacted the judge to do that. That would be improper. That's called ex parte communication. The prosecutor on this case, he is kind of a stickler for rules.
Yeah, I saw that in the courtroom.
He's very much a stickler for rules. As you witnessed that one night where he wanted her put into jail, bonds held insufficient right after the guilty verdict. So I don't know if I find it hard to believe that he did that. I do believe this was more of the judge deciding to do this on his own, trying to maybe judicially be creative and think outside the box, so to speak, on what he thought was best for the community and the safety of the community and law enforcement. You know, all the typical lines you hear from judges. Judge Bolton's not a bad guy. I actually enjoy practicing in front of him. I just think there was some things that he got wrong on this.
I saw that he was. I think he was pretty fair from what I could see the way he acted with even waving at Carolina when she came in the courtroom during Mata's case. That's why I was wondering what transpired, because it didn't seem like it struck me as somebody that would just screw her over without looking at all. That's why I thought maybe the DA had did something or said something or
no, I don't think that was necessarily the case, at least not from the prosecutor himself. I don't know if something was said from somebody above him at the DA's office to the judge. You know, that would just be pure speculation. I've got nothing to back that, and I'm not gonna disparage anybody and claim they did something that I don't know that they did.
I just hope they don't have any naked photos of Judge Bolton, and that's what they were holding over his head.
Hey, Judge Bolton's a good guy. I wouldn't want to see those photos.
But no, I mean, as far as in the firing of Kruger, obviously there were some. I mean, you obviously have, and I don't want to put out anything. I know you have some information that you were able to see because you were working on the case. I don't know what you can indulge or what you can indulge about the things that we already know about from Irving and that transpired in Carolina's case that ultimately became major policy violations of the Fort Worth PD and ultimately ended up and resulting in his termination. Of course, that's hence kind of what we were talking about, I think, when you came in about the policy violations and police officers being fired.
It's interesting you say that because during, and I think you were there for it, there was a detective during Carolina's trial who took the stand. He was from the major case unit. He's the one that went and visited her in the hospital that early that next morning because it was an officer involved incident. They call it a critical police incident. They were investigating it to see if anything was there. And I asked him while he was on the stand. So based on your investigation, Kruger's conduct was justified. And he goes, yes. And then a few days later, the chief of police comes out with a statement and says, his conduct wasn't justified. It was against department policies. And I'm sure you've all have seen it in the articles online and stuff, his statement. And what's interesting is the statement had been on the Fort Worth Police Department website right after it happened. It was dated December the 18th in the news releases. And then at some point between when that happened and just a few days ago, they've taken it down. It's no longer on there. If you actually go to their news releases, on December 18th, it talks about an officer termination. It's not Kruger. It's some other officer based on some other incident. And so I found that kind of intriguing. I really don't know why that was taken down. I wouldn't think once something was posted to the government website, somebody would try to hide it. But it's apparent in this instance, that's what happened. I could make my own opinion as to why, because, hey, Kruger just came out afterwards with the police association and said, hey, I'm going to appeal this and go through the arbitration process to appeal this indefinite suspension. And I bet there's somebody probably in the city attorney's office or something saying, hey, take this down. Not to mention, it doesn't look good. Now, I don't represent Carolina in any civil lawsuit capacity, but if I was somebody on the jury in a civil lawsuit and they came out and said, hey, what he did wasn't justified and it was against department policy, I think I'd be really siding for her to get a big check.
Well, I am looking at the T-Cole website for the licensing,
Mm-hmm.
and his name is no longer on the certified list. His name. You can go in there and pick a department, pick his last name. There's one other Kruger in the state, but that's not him. That's one out of San Antonio, Bexar County through T-Cole. They've taken his name out of the system, which means he's been decertified. So he actually has been terminated, not just indefinitely suspended. So
that's what indefinite suspension means. It means terminated.
Yeah.
They'll use those terms interchangeably because once you're indefinitely suspended, it means you're not working as a police officer anymore. They haven't given up your commission to allow another department to pick up your commission. You're suspended until forever, right? Indefinitely. So that means nobody's going to hire you, which is why he has to go through the appeal process, which is what happened in Irving. When he was indefinitely suspended or terminated from Irving PD for excessive force, he appealed. The arbiter for that stated that he shouldn't have been indefinitely suspended. He should have been suspended, but not indefinitely. Reformed the suspension to allow him to come back to the police department contingent upon, taking some classes, psych eval. I don't know what all it was, but there was a bunch of things, and I guess he didn't want to do it. So his attorney sued the city of Irving, and as part of their settlement, he was basically allowed to come back to Irving PD. So he was no longer indefinitely suspended, but he was allowed to leave Irving PD, which would mean he doesn't have bad paper anymore. He can go get hired on somewhere. And so, I don't know. I'm going to take a look at this T-Cole on him. I haven't looked at it in a little bit. This new system they have sometimes can be a little tricky on when you're looking somebody up.
Well, I looked him up back right when he got fired, and he was still certified. Now it's showing, now that we're in the new year, he's not on there anymore. So you can put the last name in there, and you can select it by department, or you can just take the department out. It'll tell you everybody by the last name. Like I'll put Kruger in. There's a Canyon, Chad. I mean, there's a bunch of people, but and they'll tell you where they're at and how long they've been there. Because I've got a Matthew C. Kruger, but he's out of Bandura County, Kendall County, Bexar County. But yep, our Matthew Kruger is no longer certified.
No, he is.
Where's it showing at? Because it's showing on
So what
T-Cole.
you need to do is if you go type in the last name Kruger, and it's Krueger, put Fort Worth Police Department, then go to license and go to peace officer license, and then go to service range. And you just put some dates that he was there. So I just put in December 1st, 2024 to December 5th, 2024.
Let me
and you
just show you
search
what I'm
and he'll
looking
pop
at.
up.
Let me just. I can't pull that up on that damn browser.
And it shows his peace officer license is still active.
You see, I'm showing this right here, and I'm hitting search, and nothing's coming up. I'm looking at the license lookup.
So let me see. So see where it says current services?
Mm-hmm.
The little button?
Yeah, click that.
Click that. No, yeah. Click that. Now put in some dates. Put like December 1st to December 5th.
David Bowie, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's kind of weird. Well, that's historical services.
No, just click on his thing, though. That's his record. It shows he's not active with Fort Worth right now. because then you can open up the
Yeah.
Fort Worth.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. That's historical. That when you click that little button, that's historical.
Yeah, it
That
just means
like
he's not
here,
currently a
12/18.
police officer, but at the top, if you look at the top where it says peace officer license right there for him.
Yeah, I know it's still saying green, but
Yeah, that means he's got an active peace officer license. Which means they have not taken his peace officer license away yet.
I mean, it looks like that. Well, obviously they say he's no longer at.
Yeah, as of December
Fort Worth.
18th, 2024.
Yep.
And that was the day they came out and made the announcement.
Yeah, it's showing a little. It was showing a little different. Like I said, that's on historical side. Because if I go back here, and I go back, and I click on this, if I click off the historical services,
Mm-hmm.
see, it says right now you are currently only searching for current services. That means that a licensee will only show if they are currently working with an agency. Switching this will show historical services as well. So
Yeah,
basically,
he's not currently working with any police department.
And that's probably
but
why
he
it wasn't
still has a
showing up.
license. That just means another department has to pick up his commission and sponsor it if they wanted to.
There was a Charles Kruger working there. I wonder if he's related. They just keep getting rid of Krugers from Fort Worth. 2 Krugers don't make it right. But, yep. So, I mean, somebody was asking real quick. So they're saying, did they destroy a public record by deleting that off their Fort Worth Police Department's website when you were talking about their announcement? Isn't that taking down a public record?
I don't know if I would go so far as to say it's a public record, but
it depends on who's running the actual page.
Yeah, and it's nothing to say they destroyed it. It may still exist, but just not accessible to the public-facing website.
So it'd be something I'd have to get through a records request.
Mm-hmm. Which is one of the things I had requested Chief Noakes bring with him to testify tomorrow.
Just crazy how it seems like they keep trying to hide stuff.
That's what it would appear to be.
Let me
trying to hide something.
I don't want to mention anybody's case in specific. It's not related to any of your cases. It's out of Dallas County. So I wanted to let you know it has nothing to do with yours. But if there was a defense attorney that requested discovery for an officer's disciplinary record, but somehow left out the last 2 reprimands that resulted in suspension off of it, one regarding the case in specific for the discovery. And I happened to do a records request 3 separate times, but sent it up to the AG and finally got it approved. And I got those 2 last reprimands that the attorney couldn't even get, and found out that I was able to get them and shove them over to him. If that was you in that situation, hypothetically, as that criminal defense attorney, is there a motion you could file when it came to pretrial 14 days before the trial date to quash based on?
So the way it works with discovery, and the Court of Criminal Appeals has said, you don't have to file a motion for discovery necessarily as a defense attorney. You just have to make a request for the discovery, and a simple email would suffice, right? So I could email a prosecutor and say, hey, I believe, based on whatever, that there are these documents, these videos, whatever it may be, that are out there, and you haven't already given them to me. Can you get them for me? I haven't really run into a prosecutor yet that said, no, I'm not getting them for you. I have run into prosecutors saying, well, here, I got this that's kind of responsive to your request. That's what was given to me by the agency. And here you go. right? And they give it over. There was a case last year. It's kind of changed some things, right? And it's called Heath, and it's here. It's a case, a Texas case, and the Court of Criminal Appeals said essentially that it is the duty of the prosecutor to find any state agent that has discovery that's responsive to a discovery request, and that request is ongoing. And in that case, there was a known video, or at least there was a suspected video out there. The defense attorney had asked for it and asked for it and asked for it. And then he was basically told it didn't exist. But then during trial, it's brought up. And so they're like, whoa, no. We're gonna take this video out of this trial now. And so there's an exclusionary rule where things could be taken out of a trial that the state tries to bring in at the last minute that wasn't given over, that had been requested. Typically, most of the counties are pretty good about giving up everything. Tarrant County's pretty darn good. I mean, in Carolina's case, I got more discovery in her misdemeanor case than I've gotten in some felony cases, including a murder case. She had more pieces of discovery than a murder trial I did last year. But
is it possible that a law enforcement agency didn't turn it over and disclose all of it to the prosecutor, that the prosecutor wasn't exactly withholding something? If the agency was maybe
it could be that the police department didn't turn it over to the prosecutor, is what I'm saying, right? It might not be the prosecutor's fault necessarily. In a way it is, because the prosecutor didn't hound the police department. You know, let's say it's there's some sort of document in the discovery that says there's an internal affairs investigation, or hey, there's some sort of disciplinary investigation, or the Rangers have been called in to investigate, something like that. And it might just be a little blurb in some sort of report or some document. So it exists. Something happened. And if they're investigating something, that means there's some paper trail of something. Somebody wrote up a report. Somebody wrote up a finding in the chain of command about something. It's out there. And so the prosecutor should really call them out on it. I mean, in all fairness, most of these prosecutors in the big counties could have anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 cases that they're individually working on at any time. It's just that they're so overworked and they're not getting enough prosecutors hired to handle all of that, which for the defense side of things is frustrating, because every time I go into court, I'll be like, hey, did you watch that discovery? My guy should get a dismissal. Or, hey, I saw that offer you made, but if you looked at the stuff, that's a ridiculous offer for a plea deal. And it, time and time again, it's I've got too much other stuff going on. I haven't even had a chance to look at it, and they won't necessarily look at something until you push the issue to go to trial. And so they might be overlooking stuff or not pushing hard enough because they haven't even seen. And so as the defense attorney, if I know it's out there and I've been asking nicely, then I would file a motion to compel discovery and have the judge hold a hearing on it so I can present, hey, look, this is why I believe this is out there, because of this one other piece of whatever in the discovery. It stands to reason that there's more. And
I have another question.
The judge could then compel the state to turn over everything.
Let me give you a hypothetical. So let's say you're that defense attorney, okay? Mm-hmm. And you say it's out there, but I actually know your client, and I actually make sure that you and your client actually have that discovery, but the prosecutor doesn't know you have that discovery because they don't know if it exists, or they're holding it back to the last minute, or whatever the games they're playing. What could you do at that point if it was given to you, and the ADA thinks that you don't have it or you don't know about it, in that case, what could you do about it?
Well, that gets into like prosecutorial misconduct. Okay. And there's a couple different ways you can approach that as a defense attorney, whether it be call for a meeting in chambers with the judge and call him out on it so it's not as public, right? It's a little bit more collegial to do that way as judges are attorneys, prosecutors attorneys, defense attorneys. Hey, look, we get it. Some things happen. But there are some rare circumstances from the defense side we could try to move to dismiss a case. Okay. Everybody thinks in the state of Texas, a defense attorney can just file a motion to dismiss a criminal case. And that's not the state of law in Texas. All right. It used to be that judges could arbitrarily on their own dismiss cases for various reasons. They changed the Code of Criminal Procedure, and the only thing that's they truly have the authority to do is to dismiss a case based on a violation of speedy trial right. That is without a doubt, that is solidified. The judge can go ahead and dismiss the case for that reason. Other than that, there's other mechanisms like to quash an indictment, quash information for various reasons, and it kind of kills the case. But something when it comes to prosecutorial misconduct, the judge would probably be found to be using his discretion to dismiss a case based on that, if you can show there's severe harm that was done. Now, if this is all before even a trial happened, right? Then the judge is probably going to dress down that prosecutor in chambers or the court, saying, hey, I actually believe the defense attorney. I think it's out there. You better get it for him. All right. So prosecutors typically don't like to make the judges angry. But I don't think, based on what you're telling me, if it was Dallas County, I don't know if it was a prosecutor actually doing it on purpose. I think it was probably either they weren't giving it to them by the law enforcement agency, or they're just kind of, I don't want to say incompetent, but maybe not as experienced to push back against the department, because they're not going to want to make a judge mad. Those prosecutors work in that same court every single day. Like, they don't change courtrooms except maybe every 6 months to a year. And so they're assigned to that court, and they're not going to want to make a judge mad.
I'm pretty sure that it was the agency, because the first 2 attempts, they denied me records. The third time, I told them take it up to the AG and let the AG decide, because they have this local city outside Dallas has a local firm that they, I guess, because the city's smaller, they have an outside firm overlooking to see what's within compliance to hold back to send up to the AG. And that's how I was able to get the full disciplinary record. But it took me 3 attempts over a course of 8 months to get this. So
Hey, BC.
Yeah, what's up, bud?
Hey, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to step off and enjoy the show from below. So appreciate you having me up. Nice to meet you, Mark.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, brother.
But
yeah, if I could just step in real quick, I'm going to take the opportunity. It's nice meeting you, Mark. I'm sure we'll be around. Appreciate you having me up, BZ. You know, move on. Got to keep moving. Thank you. Have a good evening, folks.
All right, guys. But, well, I mean, I think you pretty much covered it. I'm glad we had a lawyer on here to kind of, I mean, we picked up 10 extra people in the chat watching. So I guess they like the fact that you were kind of giving a little bit of insight on what's going on. And you haven't heard back anything on my case as of yet, huh? We're still kind of limbo.
No. I was going to give them this week to try to get all that stuff. As you saw, that motion for discovery that I filed is lengthier than city attorneys usually are accustomed to. It's the same motion I file in felony cases. So they're going to have to check everything that I asked for to see if there's anything responsive to it, and gather it up. And quite frankly, on a lot of Class C misdemeanors, there's not as much involved as far as they're not as apt to like save a lot of videos necessarily, because a lot of people just pay the tickets, or they try to fight and they try to go to trial, and then for whatever reason the officer doesn't show up, and then it's a dismissal. So they're not used to having to try to track down all the stuff that I asked for. So I'll give them this week, and then next week I'll reach out to them and see if they have anything for me yet.
Yeah, because it's kind of weird that I don't have it just says to be set for court. I keep checking every day, and I haven't seen anything even 2 months out or 3 months out, or I mean, which is kind of is that rare, or is that something that's common?
No, so municipal courts, they're doing a lot of different things, doing a lot of city ordinance stuff. Not everybody necessarily asks for a jury trial, so it kind of throws them aback, kind of when you do that. I mean, there are district judges and county judges elsewhere in the state of Texas and some of these smaller rural counties where you might ask for a trial or you might ask for a date for a hearing, and it's going to be months away. Like, they won't necessarily set it right away. I had a case out in Titus County, which is East Texas, and I just wanted to get the guy in, requested he be brought from TDC back to the county so we could enter into a plea agreement and just send him back to TDC so that that case could run concurrently. Deal was worked out, but that court would shut down around Thanksgiving time, and then they weren't doing anything, that court, until late January to early February. So they would shut down for like 3 months. Hey, Manuel, how you doing?
But well, I know you got a family to get to. Obviously, we saw the little one show up, and I know you want to spend some time with her before she's got to go to bed. I was going to pretty much call it, but I'm glad you came up here. Kind of, try to explain to people, if you're going to get cops in trouble, you got to go after those policy violations and get it on video. I've gotten good at getting these complaints founded. Obviously, not just getting one complaint founded is going to get a cop fired. We do have Chuck Bronson in the house. He's the one that taught me about policy violations. He's gotten quite a few cops in trouble and a couple of fired. And he's got some other things working that I can't really go into. But I try to explain to people their qualified immunity and their policies is what shields them from getting fired. As long as they don't break that policy, they can't lose that qualified immunity or get reprimanded, because they're doing what they're taught and instructed to do. So, and the more that we see, and if you notice in that article, it talked about these officers violating policies, which is all they care about. They don't care about laws. They don't care about rights. They only care about policies. And I think that's where the problem that we're having with policing now is, because they're quick to violate people's rights because they don't know their own rights. All they care about is following that policy and collecting that government check. I mean, at least that's my feeling, and that's how I feel about it.
Well, I think it goes partly to their training. They're supposed to, they get some constitutional law training in the academy, and there's follow-up training that they're supposed to do, and they get case law updates every year. Like, if you go into the T-Cole on an officer, you'll see where it's like the the 88th legislature update, right? Where they're taught about new laws, new penal code statutes, new things in the Code of Criminal Procedure or the Transportation Code, things like that. And they're supposed to be updated on what's changing in the law. But a lot of these guys, some of them, they don't even have a college education. They're barely high school graduates. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you would think you want the guy that's supposed to be enforcing the law to kind of understand the law. And so I don't think their training in the classes they're getting is sufficient. Otherwise, some of these guys wouldn't be doing what they're doing. And yet they run around. Kruger's a prime example. Most all of Kruger's police reports, in Carolina's case, she was arrested for evading arrest. That was one of the things she was booked in on. Now, they didn't actually charge her in court with that, and it got rejected by the DA's office. But his rationale behind that was he was trying to cite a Texas court case from 1995 for the proposition that if you just don't follow an officer's order, that's evading arrest, which is absurd. One of the things in evading arrest is intentionally fleeing. And so, especially in Carolina's case, when he's telling her to leave and move across the street, it's kind of hard to say she was intentionally fleeing at all. Therefore, you can't get to evading arrest. But his whole thing, and it wasn't just her case. I've read offense reports that have involved other auditors in the Fort Worth area where he's used the same justification on things. Oh, well, it's evading arrest because they didn't listen to my lawful order. And that's not what the law is. That's not what the actual statute says. That's not what actually the case law states. But he's learning this from Fort Worth PD. They give him little blurbs out of an opinion of a case without understanding the entire case and what the case stands for. And when you start giving them the wrong information, you're essentially empowering these officers to go around and violate people's rights because they weren't taught any different. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily all the officers that are doing this stuff are doing it on purpose because they just want to violate people's rights. It's that they think they can because they're being taught that.
Yeah, it's just, again, I've said it for a while. It's education and leadership, which comes to the culture of the agency. I found out that there's another auditor that got arrested in Oklahoma. There's actually a Oklahoma state statute, and you're going to probably kick yourself in the butt for this. Verbal interference. I mean, I don't know how you could penalize or criminalize speech, but
that would be a great one to take up on appeal.
Yeah, and it's I know an auditor right now that's fighting the charge. He cop was in the street walking to the driver's side of a traffic stop or the car, and he was on the sidewalk filming, and the female cop said something, and he told her to F off, leave him alone. And next thing you know, she's on the radio, and code 3, the guy that ends up showing up and placing him under arrest right away happens to be this girl's husband. So you got husband and wife cops who got him for verbal interference because he told them to F off. So it's just in my case, the disorderly conduct. I mean, I don't know if you saw the county commissioner's court last week, but Manuel was arrested for disorderly conduct for supposedly offending someone and dropping the F-bomb, which I the statute of disorderly conduct doesn't even say anything about offending anybody, for both of us being what we're being charged with, which is 42.01 subsection A, which says a person commits an offense if they use abusive, indecent, profane, and/or / vulgar language, and by its mere utterance tends to incite an immediate breach of the peace. And trying to figure out how anything that we said incited any kind of fighting words or violence, because
it's a struggle for me every day, because I drop the F-bomb probably every 4 words half the time. It's just
every
time in the
Marine
Marine
should
Corps,
be
when I'm in the
charged.
office,
Say every
I'm
Marine
just
should be
dropping
charged with
F-bombs
disorderly
left and
conduct.
right. So I'm probably offending so many. I should probably get about 1,000 disorderly conduct tickets a day.
I mean,
But yeah, it's
it's
just
insane.
it's stupid. Mata shouldn't have been arrested for that. You shouldn't have been arrested for what you said, and you didn't even actually say it. Um,
Well, that's
so
their job to
it's
prove it, right? That's the burden of the prosecution at this point, right?
oh yeah, yeah.
And I don't know how they can prove it if if the I don't want to go into too much, but they don't have any evidence that I said it, but I do have evidence that says otherwise. So,
Mm-hmm.
but I and I want to change the system. I know that they're getting so many cases that they're not even looking at these cases trying to take plea deals. And in my case, I feel that in alone is malicious prosecution because you're not even taking, you're an officer of the court. You're supposed to be, seeking justice, not just not looking at the facts of the case and plea deals because you're taking the word of an officer that doesn't mean squat nowadays in today's day and age because all these officers are willing to sell out their mothers and lie on police reports just to try to condemn or convict somebody because we saw that in my police report. We've seen it in Carolina's police report. I saw that in another police report that I've got 3 officers with founded complaints but policy violations and lying on the police report. And it goes back to what you said. Training. Kruger's police report said he used an armbar takedown. That was no armbar takedown.
Nope.
My complaint.
And I was a martial arts instructor in the Marine Corps. That was not an armbar takedown.
Now, if you grab somebody around the waist from behind and grab them from the waist and you slam them back this way, that's a suplex. Okay? That is not an armbar takedown. So why did this police officer that I found in Fort Worth in the same department put down exactly the word for word what Kruger said in his report, which was, I performed an armbar takedown. Well, that sounds like it's textbook and that's what's being taught, even though that's not what they're applying.
Mm-hmm.
So the culture of the department has got to change, or it's just they're just going to keep finding themselves with more civil lawsuits because the more I see it, the more complaints I'm going to file, and the more opportunities I have to file civil litigation, I'm going to do it. I'm not gonna bow down and allow them to do what they did to Carolina, what they've done to Mata, what they're doing to me, what they're doing to other auditors. I'm out for making the change, and if I have to hurt their pocketbook, so be it. That means taking more officers off the street, taking away their raises, attacking their retirement fund. When you start taking money away, I think that'll eventually get their attention. But it's more people have got to step up and stop taking. Let me ask you this
what I
hypothetically.
like to do is, especially a lot of law enforcement, they're really ego driven. They think really highly of themselves, like they know everything because they're a cop. So I like to get them on the stand and essentially interrogate them on the stand and make them look stupid while they're testifying. And I'll take them down on a little path of questions that seems really innocuous. And then boom, there's that one question. Now they can't back out of it. Now they basically have to answer it and then look like either a dumbass or they're essentially going to be perjuring themselves. And so they get their feelings hurt really bad. And I just think psychologically that's worse to them than trying to hurt their pocketbook in some way. Because honestly, you're not going to hurt a cop's pocketbook or his wallet too much, right? Because the city's going to be paying for lawsuits. It's the taxpayer. They might get fired for it, or they might just say, "Well, just don't do it next time. We got you right now. We'll pay for it." And it doesn't necessarily mean they've learned anything. And they could be continuing on that same course of action, that same conduct, because hey, city settled for this case, but I still have a job, and that's just a rarity because I do it every day to people. And this was the only person that ever said anything or sued us about it.
Well,
So I like to screw with them psychologically.
Let me do this. I kind of wanted to ask a question, and I'm kind of glad that Kevin asked this question about taking a plea deal. I was going to ask you this. Hypothetically, we'll just throw a hypothetical out there. If say I was at the courthouse and I talked to every person that came in that day that had a case or a ticket, and I told them, don't take the plea deal, take it to trial. You'll get a much better deal if you want to take one at the last minute, or take it to trial because they'll most likely drop it, or you have a good fighting chance because chances are the cop lied in your case. And everybody started just going to trial. And I'm just saying hypothetically. They all started going to trial instead of taking plea deals. What is there? Do you think that would cause the prosecution to maybe put more, I'd say, influence on the officers to stop arresting frivolous cases or trying to take frivolous cases to the DA or the city attorney because they'd be bogged down too much
No, so
than
I
what they
mean,
already are?
like in Tarrant County, there are, for instance, with Carolina's case, the evading arrest, the DA's office rejected that. They looked at the offense report, they looked at videos that were submitted, and they wouldn't accept that charge. So the DAs will reject cases when they see it's blatantly frivolous, right? Now, the thing about it in the state of Texas is people watch a lot of Law and Order, or they see about how things are in other states. An officer simply arrests you for suspicion of something. You are not officially charged until your case is filed into a court, meaning the DA has either got an indictment from a grand jury, or they filed a misdemeanor information in your case into the court. That's when you're actually charged. So there are instances where the police could arrest you on suspicion of whatever offense they want to say. They're going to send it over to the DA's office or the county attorney's office, and they're going to look at it, and they might be like, well, this cop was kind of onto something. There was an offense committed, but it wasn't what he said it was. It's something else. And so you might actually get a charge that is something other than what the police say they suspected you of. All right. So because they reject things, I don't think just setting every case for trial is necessarily the route to go, because I'll be honest with you, there are prosecutors out there who do not care. They will try every case. And if you reject a plea deal that might have been reasonable, as you get closer to trial, it's not that you get a better plea deal. You might get a worse one, because now they're preparing for trial. And the state is not under any requirement to offer you a plea deal at all. There's nothing in the Code of Criminal Procedure that states that the DA's office, the prosecutor, has to offer you a plea deal. All they have to do is ensure justice is done and prove beyond a reasonable doubt at trial that you committed the offense. Now, for judicial economy, they will typically always offer some sort of plea deal, right? That way they don't have to try it. They don't have to worry about getting jurors in and everything. And the hope would be that the plea deal is kind of beneficial for the defendant as well, right? You're not exposed to possibly jail time or prison time. You're not exposed to as much of a fine that you might have otherwise been exposed to. And I think it was Kevin that had said a lot of lawyers want you to take the plea deal. I'm not one of those lawyers. I could care less whether my client takes a plea or wants to go to trial. It's kind of, I guess, selfish in a way. I love trial. I love being in trial. And so I kind of would like all my clients to want to go to trial. But the reality of the situation is, which one got dismissed?
I think he's talking about the disorderly conduct.
Oh, good. But yeah, I mean, the reality is there are people out there that got arrested and they had committed a crime of some sort, right? And maybe there's video. It could have been somebody's Ring doorbell camera. It could have been surveillance camera from a house. I had a guy one time, he was at a liquor store hiding behind a pole outside because he saw two guys walk in that he had a beef with before. Not that they came threatening him in the store or anything. They didn't even realize he had been in the store at the same time. He went outside and waited behind a stanchion, waited for them to come out, and he cold cocked him on the side of the head as he walked by. He tried telling me, oh, well, it's self-defense because I felt threatened. Well, no, you'd already walked to your car. You came back to hide. That's lying in wait. And this liquor store had like Hollywood level camera system. It was clear as day. That's not a case you really want to take to trial, right? Let's work out something because you will be found guilty once the state plays that video. And there's not going to be any stopping that video from coming in. And so, you know, by and large, though, I don't care. And at the end of the day, I don't care. If you just don't want to take a plea deal on principle and you're willing to potentially face the consequences of a guilty verdict and a punishment, that's your life. That's your life. You get to make that decision. And I'll be there to help whoever wants to do that. But I'm also there to help negotiate a reasonable plea deal or a very favorable one for the defendant, should they choose to do that.
Okay, I want to give you a hypothetical from a standpoint of a defense attorney. Say I was your client. Say I got arrested for trespassing. I served 3 days. Okay, and I don't know, 6 months later, if we finally get a trial date, I've been out on bond this whole time, and now all of a sudden we get to the obviously the first court date, and they offer you 3 days time served. We reject it because we find that we're not guilty because of everything that we've got in the research we've done. 2 months later, we go back to court. They offer us 3 months deferred adjudication. We reject it. And now recently, before we go to a last minute pre-trial 14 days before our trial date to make sure that we have all of our discovery, before we get to the pre-trial date, they offer us to they knock it down to a disorderly conduct with a $50 fine. Do you get me here? Can you hear me? I had like a little signal issue real quick. But now they're trying to say they'll knock it down to a disorderly conduct citation with $50 fine. Do you feel as a defense attorney that them taking it from 3 days time served to deferred adjudication down to disorderly conduct with a $50 fine, that it's possible that they're going to end up throwing it out? I don't know what happened to my...
It could be. I mean,
there we go.
It could be, but if they were going to come back at you and let's say try to bring it down to a disorderly conduct with a $50 fine, well, when you pay that fine, that's a conviction. Okay? If you pay the fine, it'll be a conviction. Now, when it comes to a Class C, you can do what's called a deferred disposition, which is very much like a deferred adjudication in a Class B or Class A misdemeanor or even felony case. So there's no finding of guilt on a deferred disposition. And on Class Cs, you don't check into probation. So it might be 90 days deferred disposition. Really, all that means is just stay out of trouble, right? Don't get arrested, and it'll go away.
Right.
So if they were to hit you back, if they're already willing to come down to a Class C, but wanted $50 fine, I'd probably counter and say, well, that might be something we could do. I'll talk to them about it, but we want deferred disposition. If you were going to do deferred adjudication before, why not do a deferred disposition, right? And that would just be to avoid a conviction on your record, the deferred, maybe the $50 doesn't bother you. And once it got down to a Class C, what's the worst that's going to happen, even if you're on deferred, right? You violate, somehow you get arrested again. They haul you back in. You've pled out to the Class C. Class C is only punishable by up to $500. So you're only out monetarily at that point.
What if your evidence shows that you most likely won't be found guilty? Let me give you the same case, but trespass by the cop without getting any kind of permission first, arresting you with no grounds in a post office, and then turning off your body camera, going back and talking to the postmaster, trying to fabricate the trespass, but someone else's body camera catches the conspiring of this, and that's the reason that he got suspended for 2 days.
Oh, I would advise my client, let's take this to trial.
And
I would advise my client, let's take it to trial. Because here's the thing. Even if you were found guilty, let's say for whatever reason the jury didn't like you, and you were found guilty,
like in Carolina's case,
yeah, and let's say you had 3 days credit already that you'd served, they might think that it wasn't so egregious and they just sent you to the 3 days and you would have got the credit time served anyway, right? But at least then you got a transcript from a trial and people's testimony in a record form of what happened and the questions that were asked of them. But a case like that should not even get to the point of proceeding to trial. A good defense attorney, like I don't typically like to show my cards, so to speak, to a prosecutor, but I might show him one card, right? I might let that ace fall out of my hand, right? Or whatever, and be like, oh, I've got this, right? You might want to take a look and rethink your position on whether you want to go to trial. And they might just dismiss it at that point. Right.
Let me ask you this: if this person's attorney, say, loses, would you be willing to pick up the criminal appeals process or work with the other attorney on the criminal appeals, since that's something you do with your law firm?
So I'll pick up and do a criminal appeal on any case. I don't have to do the trial to do the appeal. I mean, I get appointed on cases from some counties to do appeals. I get hired by families who had a different trial attorney for their loved one, and they want to try to do an appeal, right? Sometimes it's a benefit having an attorney for your trial attorney that also does appeals, because then you know what to preserve, what are the big issues to preserve for appeal. Some people are under the impression that everything has to be objected to and everything is going to be so important for a case. The reality of the matter is there's a lot of things that I have to tell clients sometimes, like, no, that's what you're saying doesn't even matter. I get it matters to you, but it doesn't matter to the case necessarily. And so if you have an attorney who could do the trial and then possibly the appeal afterwards too, that's great. You've got continuity. But somebody that actually does criminal appeals knows how to look at the transcript and see what was presented and whether or not it would be sufficient evidence for conviction, and to be able to look up all the case law they needed to appropriately make that argument at the Court of Appeals. And there's further steps.
Well,
discretionary review down in Austin, right? But a lot of people, I had a guy call me the other day. I didn't know him. He had a plea deal back, I want to say it was 2019, 2018. It was deferred adjudication on a felony case. And he's just recently running into issues trying to find another job because it's still on his record of having been arrested for it. And he wants to. He called and explicitly asked, "Hey, I want to appeal this." You're way past the time to appeal, buddy. You have 30 days after a conviction or a final order to appeal. It's not 5-6 years. It's 30 days.
30
right?
days, yeah.
And so, I'd be willing to look at any case to do an appeal. Appeals are pricey though.
Yeah.
Appeals are really pricey. They're time intensive, doing the writing, doing the research to support your writing, to get it all formatted, to go potentially do oral argument somewhere. The transcript itself can cost a lot of money. I did a murder trial. The transcript alone was $11,000. Right. So,
well, let me ask you this question for an appeal. Okay, I know that when you were talking to me about finding the most local case law compared to my case and then working our way backwards. I understand that's great for a Texas case like county, state, or city. But what if there is a state like trespassing on postal, which is federal property? You're not going to find anything in state. You're only going to find it in circuit or higher. Now, there is a Ninth Circuit case where somebody was trespassed out of a post office with a Oregon-based state statute for trespassing. They were convicted, but it was overturned in the Ninth Circuit because that was basically an issue with jurisdictional. Obviously, they used a state statute where the federal already has a state trespassing code for their federal property. I know a lot of people have been asking about this question as auditors going into post offices and being trespassed. And a lot of people are convicted but don't take it to an appeals. But I did find one case of it out of the Ninth Circuit in Oregon. So would you be able to I'm trying to remember the word for it, where you can take that case and compare it to the Fifth Circuit and then shepherdize it from there?
So what you're talking about is there precedent in the case? Precedent for an area is going to come from a series of courts higher in that area. When there's a case from somewhere like the Ninth Circuit has no precedent in Texas. It would be the Fifth Circuit when we're talking about federal cases. But the Ninth Circuit case could be what's called persuasive. Okay. Especially maybe there's no precedent set in Texas or in like the Northern District of Texas federal court, because there's no precedent set by the Fifth Circuit, maybe. Right. And so we got to start somewhere, right? At that point, if we can't find something that is particularly on point for the area, the jurisdiction we're in, we'll look at other jurisdictions to find what's persuasive. And even if there is precedent, let's say it's here in Texas, let's say it's a Fifth Circuit case, but it's from like 1920 or it's old, right? But it hasn't really been used that much. Well, that Ninth Circuit case, let's say that's from 2010, right? Society changes, the outlook on things change over time too. And so that Ninth Circuit case could be very persuasive in even changing the precedent within the jurisdiction. All right. You always have to keep in mind that the higher courts don't like to upset the status quo necessarily. And that's why it's precedent. So it's got to be really convincing argument for them to change things.
The case I'm talking about is United States versus Waits in 2000. That's the only thing I can find regarding a post office being trespassed. Now, I did find one that goes back a little further, but there was some other. Part of it was overturned because there was disorderly and trespassing involved. The trespassing was overturned, but the disorderly conduct stuck. But the United States versus Waits, it was in 2000, and it was completely overturned for trespassing for that in that case. And that's the only thing I can find. Now, there might be some other federal property cases out there that I haven't looked at. The only reason I tried to compare it there was because of the postal properties and the trespass of a state ordinance or a state statute being implemented by a local agency within that jurisdiction on federal property. And again, there might be some other cases that may be newer, but that's the only thing I can find regarding the post office and trespassing.
Yeah. You'd probably want to look at other things too. Like you said, you want to look at other federal buildings, right? Look at trespass
Yes.
from Social Security Administration buildings.
With the state statute attached to it, not because, like I said, under 1751 or something like that, the federal government identifies their trespassing different than the state statute. They say it pertains to restricted areas like the White House. You climb that fence, that's trespassing.
Mm-hmm.
You go behind a fence that has the U.S. emblem that says no trespassing. That would be the no trespassing. But in order for you to be trespassed, it clearly states that you must conduct and break a rule or a crime of, like, say, disorderly conduct to be trespassed under that federal statute. But someone simply recording in a post office and the local police come and arrest you for the state ordinance or the state statute of trespassing. Again, there is that Ninth Circuit case I was able to find, but I haven't looked at any other federal property in a similar situation.
No, I mean, it's actually kind of an interesting scenario because the post office has their own law enforcement division.
Yeah.
the postal inspectors.
And the postal police too. They also have
Mm-hmm.
the postal police.
And they'll investigate things, and then, like, if they wanted to do like a federal trespassing on you, you would likely wouldn't even necessarily know it that day.
Right.
Right.
I've seen it with another case.
They would send you a letter.
Yep.
Basically, they would send you a letter saying,
with a bill.
"We suspect you of this. We're going to get an indictment, a federal indictment for this. And this is how you can handle this. If you want a lawyer, reach out to the U.S. Attorney's Office. They'll contact the Federal Public Defender's Office." Because I had a case not too long ago, because I do federal criminal defense too, where it was a postal employee being accused of stealing mail. And she got fired. She didn't get arrested at the time. They fired her on the spot based on the investigation. And then nearly a year later, she got a letter in the mail from them that stated, "Hey, look, we're about to file an indictment for this offense, and you can resolve it pre-indictment by entering in some sort of deal right now on something." So yeah, and other things, like if on a military base, if you're a civilian on a military base and you get arrested by like the MPs, or there's not even a lot of MPs anymore. A lot of these military bases are hiring their own like civilian law enforcement, basically their own cops on these bases. But if you're a civilian that get arrested, that's going to be referred to a special assistant U.S. Attorney's Office, and you'll be prosecuted in a federal court because it happened on federal land. So, but yeah, there might be some cases though, similarly to like a post office. Social Security administrations are open for business in much the same manner as a post office.
I had a couple reach out to me. This was before I met you, and Michael Eli. We were helping some people at the time that he would have them reach out to me. I would do some homework, I'd vet them, I'd check some things out, and then I would forward over to him, and then he would kind of tell me what he could and could do, and then sometimes arrange for them to speak via text or phone call, depending on his schedule and what he thought There was a case where I had a woman, a wife and husband, who went down to the Social Security Administration filming it, and they went in there. They asked them to leave. The husband walked out with the daughter. The wife got irate and started becoming disorderly. They put her in handcuffs, and eventually they talked to the husband. The husband talked to them. They let her go, and they were told to leave. And about, I don't know, say 2 weeks to a month later, they both received 4 different summons with both trespasses, both disorderly conducts, with a fine of $250 each. Um, and they were just basically told to pay the fine, or they could appear before the federal judge and work it out then. And now Michael Eline had called San Antonio, because I guess there was an office he had to call out of San Antonio and verify that they were legit. Found out that it would just be cheaper for them to pay the $1,000 than it would to hire him to try to fight those charges. But they could go before the magistrate or the judge or whoever it is that they would have to appear before and plead their case. And I guess in your case, ask for like a federal public defender
Mhm.
to be able to represent them or whatnot. And I don't know what the outcome ended up being. Because they got upset at the answer that they were provided. But yeah, typically I've heard of them just kind of mailing you a bill, or you can just appear before the magistrate.
Yeah, and it just depends, right? Like you're saying, they got some summons, some citations, and be $250. I'll be the first one to tell somebody it will be essentially cheaper for you to pay the ticket, right? Unless you legitimately fully think you're completely innocent and you want to fight it, that's fine. I'll support somebody, even on a misdemeanor, right? If you call me and say, "Hey, Mark, I like to smoke a lot of weed," and I got caught with a joint, and they're charging me with a Class B misdemeanor. Well, that's what it is in Texas, right? There's things I can do to try to make that charge go away in some manner. It's going to cost you money, though. But it could also be that they're willing to give you the 1 day credit time served with a $200 fine, right? So do you want to pay for an attorney to fight it? It's different for every single person, right? Everybody's circumstances are different. Some people just don't care that they have a criminal record, right? Maybe they had a felony in the past. And so really anything new doesn't matter, right? And they just want to get it done and over with in the past. They don't care about a conviction or whatnot. Some people might have a security clearance for their job and they can't take a conviction, even though they're guilty, right? They know they're guilty of something. They just can't plead guilty, right? So we have to try. We have to try to get the not guilty at trial, or find something to either have some evidence suppressed in order to get the state to dismiss the case. And so that's why I spend time with my clients to find out what their life circumstances are, really, to see how this criminal case is going to affect them, right?
Well, also another question too is, what if you already have a couple of convictions on there, and let's say you're not guilty and you end up going to trial? I did see something in the case of Carolina. Well, no, I don't think it was really in her case. I know they tried to pull her 2 prior convictions, but with Manuel Mata, they tried to use his entire criminal history as an enhancement for punishment in Texas, which I didn't know that they could do, but that was something I saw in the courtroom.
What, to enhance a punishment?
Yeah, enhanced. They automatically, like with Carolina's charge of interference, it was a minimum of 0 days to 6 months, where his case was no less than 30 days up to 6 months because of the enhancement.
Yeah, so the enhancement has to be pled on the charging document. Okay. So like on an indictment, you'll see the actual charge on the indictment, and then they'll say punishment enhancement, and it'll say so and so was previously convicted of the felony offense of blah, 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 blah. It actually says repeat offender. If you have a prior felony conviction, they'll say repeat offender notice on the indictment. And that means you've had a prior felony conviction, and it's going to be one level higher. So if it's third degree felony, you're going to be punished as a second degree level offense. If you're habitual, well, then you're kind of really screwed, because then they're going to, basically you're going to be at 25 to life. For misdemeanors, the code actually says even with a misdemeanor prior conviction, your minimum could be 30 days in the county jail instead of 0. It's kind of like a misdemeanor repeat offender type deal, right? So if you have any conviction from prior, you really go 30 days. Now, here's the thing. They're going to prosecute misdemeanors, Class A's and Class B's. They'll prosecute them all day long. Most county attorneys, most district attorneys aren't going through the hassle to type out the enhancement on most things. I've seen it, but it doesn't happen all the time. So it's just a matter if the state wants to pursue it or not. Like in Wise County, which is just kind of like northwest of Tarrant County, or north of Tarrant County, they routinely do not put the enhancement on the indictment, and they don't put it on the misdemeanor information either. They can amend it and put it on, but they also can just file what's called a Brooks notice, letting the court know and letting the defense know that they intend to seek an enhanced punishment based on prior criminal history. And so that's what they do to try to really kind of force a plea deal too, in some instances, right? Like, hey, you take this plea deal we're willing to offer you. We think it's a good offer, but if you want to go to trial, just know at that point we're going to go seek enhanced punishment. So it doesn't surprise me that they would have enhanced somebody, especially if it's a pet peeve case of theirs.
So they're not really seeking justice. They're just doing whatever they feel like at the moment.
No, because I mean, playing devil's advocate, they are seeking justice, right? If they do believe you committed a crime, it's the prosecutor's job to prosecute the crime. And if they haven't enhanced you, like I've had clients that should have been prosecuted on a habitual offender notice and faced 25 to life. For whatever reason, they didn't plead it in the indictment. They hadn't filed a Brooks notice. Maybe they didn't even know about it. And they make a plea offer on a case. And, it's one of those types of deals where this is a case where it could go either way at trial, right? I'm not necessarily totally convinced I can get him a not guilty at trial because there's a lot of evidence there. But I'm not totally convinced he'll be found guilty either. But hey, they haven't enhanced him. And the plea offer is fairly good, all things considered, right? Not that anybody wants to plead and go to prison. But let's say they've got him out as a second degree felony. They didn't do a habitual notice. That's a 2 to 20 then. So they offer him 5 years, right? Somebody that's a habitual felon has done some time in prison and they know what it's like. They will jump on that 5-year prison sentence instead of potentially facing 25 to life if the state ever figured out they were actually habitual before trial. So I don't know if it's so much that I saw somebody saying they're trying to scare somebody by doing that, but people that are continuously in the system, they understand what's going on. And they understand typically what they're facing. And so even though to a normal person, signing for 5 years in prison might not sound like a like a good deal. Somebody that's habitual, they would, and they would sign for it. But I've got a guy right now, he's habitual. He's kind of he did some stupid stuff just because he wasn't thinking, but he's not really guilty of the offense. And every other thing he's ever pled to, he was guilty. He'll be the first one to admit it. Like I took the plea deal because I was guilty. But in this instance, he's not guilty. The offer is ridiculous, and he still has another 25 years on parole besides this case. So he doesn't want to risk violating his parole by having a guilty plea anyway. So every case is different, and you can't judge somebody because they pled guilty to something just because you wouldn't have, because you don't necessarily know what their life circumstances were.
Well, and it's just like with me. Everybody said, pay the $262 fine and be done. No. If I do that, then how is a First Amendment auditor or a First Amendment activist going to go ahead and bow down to a disorderly conduct based on speech that is protected? Why would I do that? It's not about it's not about just paying the money and bowing down to the system and moving on like a piece of
It's the
cattle.
principle.
It's the principle. It's what I'm fighting for. I'm not going to let them do to me, or what they're doing to me, what they're doing to Manuel Mata about, same thing in the county commissioner's court last week. And he's deciding to fight it too. I mean, they're trying to do whatever they can to violate the bond. Just like what they did with Carolina. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I know you got to get, so like I said, some time with your family and stuff. You're working on that murder trial. You got to be in court tomorrow. But I don't know if we can see your card. Your card's made of blue, and I have the blue screen thing going on here. But Pantheon Legal Group, I don't know if they can see it. I'll probably turn it around for the QR code. No, everything's killing my green screen, blue screen here. But you can reach Mark Strife, attorney at law, criminal defense, criminal appeals, and mostly operates out of the Metroplex and surrounding areas, but willing to travel anywhere in Texas, practices in Texas. Marine Corps veteran, also went to college. I know I saw this, notice you're sporting your SMU hoodie. Got your SMU hoodie there. He's who's representing me. So everything that you guys donate and everything, trying to get to my number, obviously it goes to Mark so he can represent me. And then I don't want to talk about what we're going to do after the case. But I'm not going to stop. Just like the hoodie says, we don't stop. And I don't know if Mark, you got to see my bank audit that I released before this live stream. And all those who haven't seen it, please go check out my last video that I dropped at 6 p.m. Central Time. It's the Chase Bank audit. Make sure you hit that like button, you share across your platform, comment, and subscribe. And I'm going to have you guys do the same thing on this live stream. Make sure you like, subscribe, share across the platforms, and comment down below. And I'm going to get the flock out of here. But do you have anything else to say, Mark, before we sign off?
No, thanks for having me on, and I'll try to jump on more often for you.
I think a lot of these guys would like to hear about what's going on in Texas, the system, the court, learn a little bit of Texas law. Michael Eline does great teaching a little bit of law up here, and kind of just some hypothetical legal advice. And it's maybe somebody in the group may need your services in the future. So with that being said, I'm going to sign off. And you guys have a great night. I'm going to probably be jumping on Generally Specifics panel, so I'll see you guys over there. And Mark, if you want to hang tight for just a minute, I'm going to end the stream and we'll be able to talk without us being live. So okay. That being said, I'll see you guys on the next live stream. Later.